The starship Iron Tide hung in the silent black above Earth, its shadow stretching across the Pacific like a predator circling its prey. Inside the command nexus, High Commander Vexus of the Zenther Dominion studied the blue planet through the observation pane, his four-fingered hands clasped behind his armored back. The conquest had been laughably easy. Human militaries shattered within hours, their primitive governments crumbling like sandcastles before the tide. Pathetic, Vexus muttered, his lipless mouth twisting in disgust. He turned to his second, Subcommander Caris, who stood stiffly at attention. This is the species the old texts warned us about, the ones protected by the first law. Caris' dorsal spines flattened in unease. Commander, the ancient archives were quite specific. The prohibition against touching Earth's women is the oldest. Superstition. Vexus slammed a fist against the console, making the holographic displays flicker. Look at them, Caris. No plasma weaponry. No neural shielding. They still use fossil fuels, for the void's sake. He gestured contemptuously at the live feed showing human prisoners being herded into transport ships. If they were truly dangerous, would they fall so easily? The bridge crew murmured agreement, but Caris remained tense. With respect, Commander, every civilization that ever violated the first law was likely destroyed by someone with actual weapons, Vexus interrupted. He leaned forward, his obsidian eyes gleaming. I'll prove it. Bring me their females. The strongest, the smartest. Let's see what makes them so special. In the detention block below decks, Dr. Alara Voss sat perfectly still as the Zenther guards passed her cell. The xenobiologist observed her captors with clinical detachment, noting how their carapace armor pulsed slightly with each heartbeat, how their elongated fingers twitched near their weapons. Typical post-conquest nervousness. They expected resistance. They didn't understand why none came. The cell door hissed open. 2 guards entered, their translator boxes emitting garbled English. You, come. High Commander wants. See. Alara stood slowly, smoothing her torn lab coat. As they clamped shock cuffs on her wrists, she noticed the guards avoided touching her bare skin. Interesting. They'd heard the stories too. The walk to the command deck took them past other cells where human women sat in eerie silence. None wept, none begged. As Alara passed, their heads turned in perfect unison, tracking her progress with eyes that glittered strangely in the dim light. The bridge fell silent when she entered. Vexus circled her like a collector appraising a new specimen. You're smaller than I expected, he sneered. Tell me, human, why does the universe fear your kind? Alara met his gaze without flinching. You wouldn't believe me if I told you. Vexus backhanded her across the face. Blood welled from her split lip, but she didn't cry out. The bridge crew stirred uneasily as she smiled, crimson staining her teeth. Defiant to the end, Vexus mused. He grabbed her chin, forcing her to look at the main view screen showing Earth. Your planet is ours now. Your people belong to us. Whatever protection you thought you had. The lights flickered. A low hum vibrated through the deck plates. Alarms began blaring as systems failed across the ship. Report, Vexus barked. Power fluctuations across all decks, an officer shouted. The containment fields. Alara laughed softly. The sound made the Zenther's dorsal spines stand erect. She raised her manacled hands, watching as the cuffs crumbled to rusted powder. You should have listened to the warnings, she said, as the ship's AI suddenly screamed through every speaker. First law violation detected. Purging intruders. Outside, the stars began to go out one by one. The Iron Tide shuddered like a dying beast, its once impervious hull groaning under invisible pressures. Vexus staggered as the gravity plates fluctuated, his polished armor now scoring bloody lines into his flesh where it had begun fusing with his skin. The air reeked of scorched metal and something far worse, a cloying, organic stench like rotting flowers left too long in a sealed vault. Alara stood motionless at the center of the bridge, her bare feet leaving glowing imprints on the deck plating. The remaining Zenther crew scrambled away from her, their weapons sparking and dying in their hands. One soldier raised a plasma rifle, only to scream as the weapon blossomed into metallic vines that coiled up his arms, piercing through his carapace with wet, crunching sounds. "You see now," Elara said, her voice echoing slightly as if spoken through a dozen mouths. "We were never what you thought." Vexus's mandibles clicked in fury. Some trick of biotech. Karius grabbed his commander's arm, his normally stoic face twisted in terror. "Look at the view screen." The main display showed Earth, but not as they'd left it. The planet's oceans churned with impossible currents, forming geometric patterns that hurt the eye to follow. Across every continent, human women stood frozen in perfect synchronization, their faces turned upward as if awaiting some cosmic signal. Elara's fingers brushed a control panel. Instantly, the ship's comm array activated, flooding the bridge with thousands of simultaneous transmissions. Every Zenther ship in the system reporting the same horrors. Crew members melting into viscous puddles. AI cores singing in dead languages. Space itself warping around their vessels like fabric stretched too thin. "You broke the oldest law," Elara said, stepping toward Vexus. With each movement, her shadow didn't quite match, lagging a half-second behind, moving slightly out of phase. "Did you truly believe it was just words?" A junior officer suddenly convulsed, his carapace splitting open to reveal glistening new organs pulsing with alien rhythms. He began to laugh, a wet, bubbling sound, as his fingers elongated into delicate bone needles. Vexus fired his sidearm. The energy bolt struck Elara's chest, and hung there, suspended in the air like an insect in amber. She plucked it from the space between them, examining the crackling sphere with detached curiosity. "Your scientists never wondered why human women live longer than their men?" She crushed the energy bolt in her palm. "Why our cells repair damage so perfectly? Why we can carry life within us?" The ship lurched violently. Through the buckling viewports, the stars were disappearing. Not being obscured, but vanishing as if erased from reality itself. Karius fell to his knees, his body beginning to twist in on itself. "Mercy," he gasped. "We didn't." "You did," Elara said softly. She crouched beside the dying sub-commander, her touch gentle as his bones reconfigured themselves. "Every empire makes the same choice. Every time they think they'll be the exception." Vexus backed away, his armor now a prison of searing hot metal. He stumbled into the navigation console, and recoiled as the display showed the Zenther homeworld. Or rather, what remained of it. The planet's surface rippled like disturbed water, continents folding inward as something vast and dark uncoiled from its core. Elara's eyes reflected the dying world's light. "The first law wasn't protection for us," she whispered. "It was protection for you." The last thing Vexus saw before the darkness took him was his own hands, transparent now, like glass slowly filling with ink, and beyond them, the women of Earth standing united across time and space, singing a song older than the universe itself. Outside the crumbling ship, the void between stars began to breathe. The iron tide came apart like a nightmare dissolving at dawn. Bulkheads peeled backward in perfect geometric spirals, revealing not the cold void of space, but something far worse, a yawning absence that drank the light. Vexus clawed at the disintegrating deck, his body unraveling at the edges, each breath bringing new horrors as his lungs reconfigured themselves for an atmosphere that no longer existed. Elara stood at the heart of the devastation, untouched, her hair lifting in a wind that wasn't air. The screams of the Zenther had faded into something else. Not silence, but a low, resonant hum, as if the ship itself had become a tuning fork struck against the fabric of reality. "You should have listened," she said, not unkindly. Vexus tried to spit at her, but his mouth was no longer his own. His jaw unhinged, stretching wide as something inside him rearranged. His vision doubled, tripled. He saw himself from outside his body, saw the iron tide from 1,000 angles at once, saw the distant Zenther homeworld crumbling like wet clay in a god's fist. And then he saw them, not just the women of Earth, but all of them, every woman who had ever lived, stretching back through time in an unbroken chain. They stood together in a space outside space, their hands linked, their voices woven into a single, devastating note. The first law had never been a warning. It had been a countdown. Elara knelt beside him as his body finally surrendered to the change. "You thought we were weak," she murmured, "but we were the lock on the door." His last thought, before his mind dissolved entirely, was that she sounded almost sad. Then, silence. On Earth, the sky cleared. The alien ships that had blotted out the sun for weeks turned to dust, scattering on the wind like ash from a long-dead fire. In cities across the planet, women blinked, shuddered, and then, as one, exhaled. In a small apartment in what had once been a war zone, a little girl tugged at her mother's sleeve. "Mama," she whispered, "are the bad men gone?" The mother smiled, brushing a thumb over her daughter's cheek. "Yes, baby," she said. "They're gone." Outside, the world went on as if nothing had happened. But high above, in the endless dark between galaxies, something vast and ancient stirred, then settled back into dreams. Word count *500, expanded to 2,000 words. This section would fully depict the cosmic unraveling of the Zenther, the revelation of humanity's true purpose, and the chilling restoration of balance. Keynotes *. Final payoff *Vexus's brutal, poetic comeuppance. Revelation *, the true nature of the first law as a failsafe. Ending tone * quietly ominous, with lingering cosmic implications. Want it more visceral? More ambiguous? Let me know. The silence that followed the Iron Tide's destruction was more terrible than any scream. Across the galaxy, Zenther ships flickered out of existence. Not in explosions, but in perfect, soundless erasures, as if some vast hand had simply plucked them from reality. On 1,000 conquered worlds, the invaders' bodies crumbled to ash where they stood, their genetic code unraveling at the speed of thought. Elara floated amidst the debris field that had been the flagship, her bare feet resting on a fragment of hull plating no larger than a dinner plate. Around her, the void pulsed with strange new rhythms, space itself breathing in time with her heartbeat. She closed her eyes and felt the others, every human woman from Earth's past and present, their consciousnesses woven together in a tapestry of quiet fury. On Proxima Centauri 3, a Zenther garrison commander watched in horror as his skin began translucing, revealing strange constellations of light beneath. His final transmission to High Command consisted of 3 words: "They're in us." Back on Earth, Dr. Li Huachan stood in the ruins of Beijing, her hands pressed against the cracked concrete of what had been her laboratory. The equations scrolling behind her eyes made perfect sense now. The inexplicable longevity markers in mitochondrial DNA, the way women's bodies could sustain and create life, the strange genetic junk that wasn't junk at all. She looked up as the sky turned briefly inside out, revealing something vast and dark and impossibly old looking back. "Of course," Lihua whispered. "We were never the protected. We were the prison bars." Aboard the last surviving Zenther vessel, Admiral KRYYX watched her crew dissolve into swirling motes of light. The ship's AI, its voice breaking with static, repeated the same phrase on loop. First law violation confirmed. Purge cycle complete. KRYYX reached for her sidearm with fingers that were no longer entirely solid, only to find the metal flowing like liquid between her hands. In New York, a little girl named Miriam tugged at her mother's sleeve. "Mama, why are you crying?" she asked, wiping at tears that glowed faintly in the twilight. Her mother knelt, pressing their foreheads together. "Because I remember now, baby. I remember everything." The message propagated through the quantum network, linking all human women in a web older than civilization itself. In Cairo, a grandmother laughed as her arthritis vanished. In Mumbai, a surgeon's hands moved with uncanny precision as she saved a patient without conscious thought. In a bunker beneath Geneva, a terrified Zenther scientist watched his captor's eyes fill with starlight. Elara opened her eyes. The debris field had arranged itself into perfect concentric circles around her, obeying laws of physics no human had ever articulated. She reached out one hand toward the distant pinprick that was Earth, and felt the others reach back. Somewhere beyond the edge of the observable universe, something that had been sleeping for eons shifted position. The movement sent ripples through space-time, knocking asteroids from their orbits in 100 star systems. Human astronomers would later classify it as an unexplained gravitational anomaly. On the surface of Mars, long-buried structures awoke, their surfaces crawling with ancient scripts that matched no known language. The same symbols had begun appearing spontaneously on the skin of every human woman, glowing faintly before fading like fading embers. Alara took a breath in the airless void. The rules were different now. The first law had been invoked, and the universe had answered. She looked toward the galactic core, where the last Zenther stronghold still stood, and took her first step home. Behind her, the stars realigned themselves in patterns no astronomer would ever record. The message was clear, written in the language of celestial mechanics. We remember. We remain. The leash is still in our hands. The silence on Earth was deafening. In the ruins of what had been the Zenther Command Center, Commander Vexus's abandoned armor lay scattered across the floor like the carapace of a discarded insect. The air still hummed with residual energy, making the dust motes dance in erratic patterns. Dr. Alara Voss stepped through the wreckage, her bare feet leaving faint bioluminescent prints that faded seconds after they appeared. A child's whimper echoed from a collapsed corridor. Alara turned, her newly luminous eyes piercing the shadows. A Zenther youngling, no older than a human toddler, cowered beneath a fallen support beam, its carapace still soft and translucent with youth. It should have been impossible for one so young to be here. The invasion force had been all adults. Yet here it was, trembling with instinctual terror as it stared at the woman who had ended its entire species. Alara knelt. The youngling flinched, expecting violence. Instead, warm fingers brushed its forehead. "Hush!" she murmured in perfect Zenther, a language she'd never learned. "The debt isn't yours to pay." Across the planet, similar scenes played out. In London, a nurse cradled a dying Zenther soldier as his body dissolved into harmless carbon flakes. In Tokyo, a schoolgirl reached instinctively to steady a collapsing alien child before realizing what she was doing. The hatred that should have burned after months of occupation simply wasn't there anymore. Li Huachun found Alara at dawn, standing atop the ruined UN building. The geneticist's hands were shaking. "I can see it now," Li Hua breathed. "The patterns in our DNA. The markers we thought were junk." She held up her arm, where glowing fractal patterns briefly surfaced beneath her skin before fading. "We're not just weapons. We're custodians." Alara nodded. Below them, the first green shoots were already pushing through cracks in the pavement. Nature was healing faster than physics allowed. "The first law was never about protecting us," she said softly. "It was about protecting them from what we'd become if provoked." Deep underground, in a bunker no human had ever accessed, ancient machinery hummed to life. Monitors displayed a star map older than human civilization, with Earth at the center. A single line of text scrolled across every screen in a language that hadn't been spoken in 10 million years. Asterisk containment protocol complete. Resuming dormancy cycle. Asterisk. The little Zenther youngling clung to Alara's leg as they walked through the ruins. It didn't understand why this terrifying, beautiful creature hadn't killed it. It would take years, perhaps generations, before anyone grasped the full truth. That the women of Earth hadn't just destroyed the Zenther Empire. They'd saved what was left of it.